Joining us now to discuss is biostatistician Steve Milloy, the founder of junkscience.com. Thanks for being here tonight, Steve.
Hey, Kara, thanks for having me back.
Great. So it's not even Earth Day yet, but the crazies are already chaining themselves to buildings, and Biden's restoring old environmental regulations. Does the madness ever end?
No, it's never going to. As a matter of fact, it's getting worse. That guy he broke down when he started talking about the climate. There's an increasing amount of, mental anxiety that climate activists have caused. And there's even I think it's called the Climate Psychiatric Alliance or Association, something like that. Psychiatrists dedicated to treating people who have climate anxiety. And clearly, if you've gone off the deep end and have been, steeped in climate hysteria or climate idiocy for too long, it's not good for your mental health. You raised the other important point about Biden rolling back. There's this thing called the National Environmental Policy Act, which was enacted in 1969 to make sure that when we do infrastructure work, we don't destroy the environment. Well, it's become really just a way to kill projects, which is how the Greens use it. President Trump had tried to streamline the process, but today Biden finished rolling back what President Trump had done and now is making things worse. Now we're not going to be able to build infrastructure unless we consider climate. And of course, you may recall that last year Republicans voted for hundreds of millions of dollars in the infrastructure bill, Joe Biden's infrastructure bill. Well, all those investments are now in jeopardy because Greens will be able to use the National Environmental Policy Act to block them all, and arbitrarily so. So I hope those Republicans are proud of themselves for getting hoodwinked. They agreed to spend all that money, but what they didn't think about was you've got to fix the National Environmental Policy Act. So now the Biden administration has all this money. It's not going to be spent on infrastructure. All these projects are going to be delayed. The whole thing is just a disaster.
It is. And speaking of disasters, this Friday is, in fact, Earth Day. And I remember last year you and I were talking about it. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the co-founder of Earth Day, wasn't he found to have composted his girlfriend later on? I'm not making that up, am I?
Well, it's a very weird holiday. You're right. I mean, that guy, I forget what the guy's name is, but he did something bad to his wife. Earth Day is always on Lenin's birthday. And I don't believe that's a coincidence. I don't think either one of those is a coincidence. I mean, Earth Day is this, insane holiday that we have where we worship the earth. 50 years ago or 52 years ago when Earth Day started, you can make a case that we needed to pay more attention to environmental protection. And guess what? Over the ensuing 50 years we have, yet we are stuck with laws that were passed 50 years ago and have never been updated and basically allow environmentalists to do whatever they want, stop whatever projects they want, set whatever air quality, water quality, nonsensical standards they want. And what Congress needs to do is update these laws to reflect the fact that our environment, by and large, is clean and safe, and it's not 1970 anymore. But that's going to be impossible to do as long as Joe Biden's in the White House.
It is, and now we're hearing the headlines are screaming Joe Biden. He's allowing more oil drilling, they'll say, on the federal public lands. Something Republicans for a long time have been asking for, especially given the current situation. But is it exactly as the administration says it is?
No, Joe Biden is doing nothing to increase oil production. He has been defying a federal court order. And for the last 5 quarters since Joe Biden's been president, there has been no new oil drilling on federal lands. Now, he has announced an upcoming auction for leases in June, but that is only for 20% of the amount that the Trump administration was producing. And now with these new rules, the NEPA rules, there are other rules that the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission is trying to impose. None of that oil is going to ever see the light of day. We need more Republicans in Congress. We need to get rid of Democrats in the White House to unleash our energy industry. And that is the only way gas prices are coming down.
And the last time that you and I spoke, we talked about your Communist China audit. It was a shareholder proposal. Can you recap some of that for us and explain some of the updates? I see ExxonMobil, Verizon, and some of these others are holding some voting. So can you give us those updates?
Sure. So at 3M and Verizon, I'm a shareholder, and I have introduced shareholder proposals called what they're called the Communist China Audit. And it's basically for the company to report to shareholders how much their business depends on Communist China. Now, this is important because, as we've seen with the Russian invasion of Ukraine, Western companies have bailed out of Russia. And in the case of, for example, the oil companies like BP, Shell, and Exxon, these companies have now had tens of billions of dollars of losses because they've had to abandon their Russian operations. Well, what's going to happen when China invades Taiwan and we start bailing out of doing business with China? And there's also COVID, and there's lots of reasons to be concerned about China. We need to know, shareholders have the right to know how much these businesses are dependent on Communist China, and they need to start moving out of there. My proposal at Exxon is, I call it the shareholder proposal to end all shareholder proposals, and that's literally what it would do. Shareholder proposals at companies are optional. They don't have to do them. So at Exxon, I've introduced a proposal to give management, to force management to block these shareholder proposals. And that's important, especially at Exxon, because that's how climate activists have come to almost take over Exxon. They control a number of board seats. In a couple of years, at the current, at last year's rate, they'll take over Exxon. And that's going to be terrible for shareholders and for America generally.
Well, Steve, keep up the great work, and thank you for joining us tonight.
All right, Kara, thank you very much.
And up next, just like they did with our brave